The strangest thing about the night Ethan Caldwell lost his smile was that the music never stopped. It kept floating over the upper deck of the yacht, soft jazz from a three-piece band tucked beneath a canopy of ivory lights, while Manhattan glittered behind him like a city built just to applaud. Ethan stood near the glass railing in a white ivory blazer, one hand wrapped around a crystal flute of champagne, the other resting beside the silver face of his Swiss watch. 200 guests watched him as if every word he spoke could raise stock prices. Investors, reporters, old family friends who had never missed a chance to be photographed beside success. Below them, the Hudson moved dark and slow, carrying reflections of the skyline in broken gold. Ethan lifted his glass a little higher. Tonight was supposed to be simple. A celebration. A victory lap. Caldwell Maritime Holdings had just closed the acquisition of 3 luxury resorts along the Atlantic coast, and every smile on that deck had been purchased with timing, strategy, and the quiet fear people felt around a man who rarely needed to repeat himself. To knowing when to move first, Ethan said, his voice smooth enough to make even arrogance sound expensive. Laughter rose around him. Glasses lifted. Camera flashes blinked. No one noticed the waitress near the service door, balancing a silver tray with both hands. Clara Whitmore had learned how to disappear inside rooms like this. White blouse, black skirt, comfortable shoes, hair pulled back with a wine-red ribbon that made her look softer than she felt. She moved carefully between silk dresses and tailored suits, offering champagne to people who took the glass without seeing the hand that held it. A sudden roll of the yacht shifted the deck beneath her feet. One spoon slid from her tray and tapped against the floor. It was a small sound, barely anything, but Ethan heard it. His eyes cut toward her. Not angry, not loud. Worse, amused. "This deck is for people who can keep their balance," he said, low enough to sound like a joke and clear enough for the nearest guest to smile. Clara bent, picked up the spoon, and placed it back on the tray. Her fingers tightened once around the silver edge, then relaxed. "Of course, sir," she said. Her voice did not shake. That bothered Ethan more than if she had apologized twice. She turned toward the service corridor, but not before her eyes caught the watch on his wrist. For one breath, the noise of the party seemed to thin. Swiss. Silver. A deep blue face. The same watch from the photograph hidden in the small wooden box beneath her bed. The same watch her son had pointed to every time he asked why the man in the picture had no name. Clara looked away before memory could reach her face. Downstairs, in a narrow staff room behind the galley, 5-year-old Noah Whitmore sat on an overturned crate with a picture book on his lap and his sneakers swinging above the floor. The babysitter had canceled 20 minutes before Clara's shift. The event manager had allowed him below deck only after Clara promised no guest would ever see him. Noah had tried to be good. He really had. But the yacht was full of sounds. Music, footsteps, laughter, the bright clink of glasses from somewhere above. Then he saw the man through the small round window in the corridor door. Tall, pale-haired under the lights, wearing a light blazer, raising a glass. Noah pressed his palm to the glass. His eyes widened, not with fear, but with the strange certainty children sometimes carry before adults have the courage to name it. Clara returned just in time to see him standing. "Noah," she whispered. "Stay here." But he was already looking past her. "Mommy," he said softly. "Why does that man have my eyes?" Clara's breath stopped. Above them, Ethan Caldwell raised the champagne to his lips. The crowd leaned in for the toast. And then, from the stairway leading to the upper deck, a small voice broke through the music. "Are you the man from Mommy's box?" The glass paused less than an inch from Ethan's mouth. Every face turned. Clara stood at the top of the stairs, pale but steady, her wine-red ribbon moving in the river wind. Beside her, Noah held the railing with one hand and the tiny Caldwell crest on his necklace with the other. The champagne bubbles kept rising. The jazz kept playing. But for the first time that night, no one was celebrating. For 3 seconds, Ethan Caldwell did not move. The champagne flute stayed in his hand, tilted slightly, untouched, catching the deck lights like a small frozen star. Around him, the guests waited for the charming answer. The easy laugh. The polished correction that would turn a child's question into a harmless misunderstanding. Ethan had built an empire on knowing what to say before anyone else understood the problem. But now a 5-year-old boy stood in front of him with Ethan's eyes, Ethan's stillness, and the tiny Caldwell crest resting against his shirt as if it had always belonged there. Clara stepped forward before the silence could turn cruel. "Noah," she said gently, holding out her hand. "Come back to me." Noah looked at her, confused by the fear she was trying so hard to hide. "But, Mommy, he is wearing the watch from the picture." A soft ripple moved through the crowd. Not loud. Not yet. Just the beginning of whispers passing from diamond earrings to folded pocket squares. Ethan lowered the glass slowly. His gaze dropped to the boy's necklace. The crest was small, old, and unmistakable. A silver compass wrapped in a laurel branch. His grandfather had designed it. His father had worn it. Ethan had once given a matching pendant away during a summer he had taught himself to forget. "Where did you get that?" he asked. His voice was quiet, but the edge inside it made the nearest guest stop breathing. Clara placed herself beside Noah, not in front of him, not hiding him, but close enough that he could feel her hand on his shoulder. "It was given to me," she said. "A long time ago." Ethan's eyes lifted to hers. For the first time that night, he really looked at the waitress. Not the uniform, not the tray, not the wine-red ribbon holding back her hair. Her face, the calm mouth, the tired eyes, the kind of dignity that did not ask permission to stand upright. Something flickered in his memory. Rain on a hotel awning in Newport. A woman laughing softly because the power had gone out in the restaurant. A red ribbon tied around her wrist after the wind had ruined her hair. He blinked once, and the memory vanished behind suspicion. "This is a private event," he said. "Children are not allowed on this deck." Clara nodded once. "I know. Then why is he here?" "Because he saw you." Noah leaned closer to Clara, sensing the change in Ethan's voice but not understanding why adults made the truth sound dangerous. "Mommy did not let me come up," he said quickly. "I came by myself. I just wanted to ask." A woman near the bar whispered something about security. A man laughed under his breath, then stopped when Ethan turned his head. His assistant, Daniel Price, moved toward him with a phone already in his hand. "Sir, I can handle this." Ethan raised one finger. Daniel stopped. The band had finally gone quiet. The last note from the saxophone faded into the river wind. Ethan looked at Clara again. "How much?" he asked. The words were soft, almost private, but everyone heard them. Clara's expression did not change. Only her fingers tightened lightly around Noah's shoulder. "Excuse me." Ethan stepped closer, his white ivory blazer bright beneath the string lights. His face controlled in the way powerful men control themselves when they believe they are being watched. "How much did someone pay you to walk onto my deck with a child wearing my family crest?" The guests went still. Even the river seemed to darken below them. Clara stared at him for a long moment. If the words hurt her, she did not give them the satisfaction of showing it. She reached into the pocket of her service apron and pulled out a sealed medical envelope, folded carefully from being carried too many times. She held it out, not like evidence, not like a weapon, but like something heavy she was tired of carrying alone. "No one paid me," she said. "Your son needs your medical history." The champagne flute slipped lower in Ethan's hand. Noah looked up at him with open, searching eyes. No accusation, no demand, just a question waiting for a man brave enough to answer it. Ethan did not take the envelope at first. He looked at Clara's steady hand, then at the child, then at the crest that should not have been there unless a forgotten piece of his life had found its way back to him. Behind him, 200 people waited for the millionaire to speak. But Ethan Caldwell had never felt poorer than he did in that silence. Ethan took the envelope because too many people were watching him not to. The paper felt thin in his hand, but somehow heavier than every contract he had signed that year. Clara did not release it until his fingers closed around the edge. For one quiet second, their hands almost touched. She pulled back first. Not quickly, not dramatically, just enough to remind him there was a distance between them he had helped create without knowing its name. Daniel Price stepped closer again, lowering his voice. "Mr. Caldwell, we should move this inside." Ethan looked at the rows of faces around him. Investors who had trusted his judgment. Reporters pretending not to listen. Friends who loved spectacle as long as it happened to someone else. His celebration had become a courtroom without a judge. "Clear the forward lounge," Ethan said. Daniel nodded and hurried toward the glass doors. Ethan turned back to Clara. "You and the boy will come with me." Clara's eyes lifted. "His name is Noah." The correction was soft, but it landed cleanly. Ethan swallowed. Noah, he said, and the name seemed unfamiliar in his mouth, as if it belonged to a language he should have learned years ago. Noah looked up at him, curious now, less frightened. Are you mad? The question broke something in the air. Ethan opened his mouth, but the old answers did not fit. He could be mad at disruption, mad at humiliation, mad at being cornered in front of everyone. But he could not be mad at a child holding a railing with one hand and a family crest with the other. No, Ethan said. I am not mad at you. Clara studied him, searching for the part he had left unsaid. Then she took Noah's hand. They walked across the deck together, past the champagne tower, past the silent band, past women with frozen smiles, and men who suddenly found their shoes interesting. Clara kept her chin level. She had served some of those people an hour earlier. Now they stepped aside for her, as if the uniform had become something they did not understand. Inside the forward lounge, the noise of the party became a muffled hum behind thick glass. The room smelled of polished wood, citrus candles, and money made invisible. Ethan stood near the bar and opened the envelope. Medical forms, a pediatric specialist's letter, genetic screening requests, a note from a clinic in Queens asking for paternal history related to a manageable heart rhythm condition. Manageable. The word should have comforted him. It did not. His eyes moved faster. Father unknown. Family history unavailable. Follow-up recommended. Ethan looked up. How long? Clara stood beside the sofa, one hand resting on Noah's shoulder. The doctors noticed it 2 months ago. They said it is treatable, but they need more information. Why did you not contact me? The question came out sharper than he intended. Clara's face remained calm, but something in her eyes cooled. I did. Ethan's jaw tightened. I would have known. You did not. That is not an answer. It is the only answer I have been living with. Noah leaned against Clara's skirt, watching them both with the careful attention of a child who had learned when adults were trying not to say too much. Ethan lowered the papers. When Clara breathed in through her nose. Not for courage. For control. When I found out I was pregnant. Twice by letter. 3 times by phone. Once at your office. Your assistant told me you did not meet with women who confused a weekend with a future. The words did not rise. They did not need to. Ethan stared at her. A memory moved behind his eyes, not of Clara, but of Vanessa Reed, his former communications advisor, placing folders in front of him, filtering his schedule, deciding which voices mattered. Who told you that? He asked. Clara gave him the name without bitterness. Vanessa Reed. Daniel froze near the door. Ethan saw it. A fraction of stillness. A train man reacting before he remembered to hide it. Ethan turned to him. Daniel. Daniel's face lost color. Sir, that was before my time. Find everything. Yes, sir. No summaries. No filtering. Every call log. Every email. Every visitor record. Now. Daniel left so quickly the door barely clicked behind him. In the quiet that followed, Ethan looked down at Noah. The boy was tracing the Caldwell crest on his necklace with one small thumb. Ethan had seen that motion before. His father used to do the same thing with a cufflink during difficult board meetings. A ridiculous detail. A devastating one. Why tonight? Ethan asked. Clara's answer came without hesitation. Because the clinic called this afternoon. Because the specialist needs answers this week. Because your company hosted the event that hired my catering team. Because I thought I could leave the envelope with your office manager and go home without you ever seeing us. She looked toward the deck, where the champagne lights blurred against the glass. I did not bring him here to embarrass you. Ethan looked at the medical pages again. For the first time all evening, the empire outside the door felt small. Smaller than a child's heartbeat. Smaller than a woman's steady voice after 5 years of not being believed. Daniel returned 7 minutes later with a laptop under one arm and the expression of a man who had found a locked door inside a house he thought he knew. He placed the computer on the low walnut table, opened it, and turned the screen toward Ethan without speaking. The forward lounge was almost too quiet. Beyond the glass, the party had resumed in fragments, a forced murmur of conversation, a nervous return of music, the kind of sound people made when they wanted to pretend nothing serious had happened. Ethan leaned over the laptop. Clara did not move closer. She stayed beside Noah, her hand resting lightly at the back of his neck, feeling the warmth of him through his shirt, reminding herself that the only reason she had stepped onto that yacht was standing right there, blinking sleepily under lights too bright for a child. Daniel cleared his throat. There are archived visitor notes from 5 years ago. Your calendar was managed by Vanessa Reed at the time. Miss Whitmore came to the Caldwell Tower lobby twice. Both visits were marked as personal disturbance, no executive relevance. Ethan's face did not change, but his hand went still on the edge of the table. Read the next line. Daniel hesitated. Sir. Read it. Daniel looked at the screen. Instruction from Vanessa Reed. Do not escalate. Do not allow contact. Subject likely seeking money or publicity. The words entered the room and seemed to take the oxygen with them. Noah looked up at Clara. Mommy, is he talking about us? Clara crouched beside him before Ethan could answer. Her ribbon slipped forward over one shoulder, dark red against the white of her blouse. He is talking about a mistake grown-ups made before you were born, she said. You did nothing wrong. Noah nodded because he trusted her more than he understood the sentence. Ethan looked at them, and something in his chest tightened with a force no hostile acquisition had ever produced. 5 years. First steps. First words. First birthday candles. A whole childhood had been happening somewhere outside his windows while he argued over waterfront zoning and shook hands beneath chandeliers. Emails. Ethan asked. Daniel turned the laptop slightly. 3. 1 sent to your public office address. 2 to the executive gatekeeping account. All routed to Vanessa. Ethan read the first subject line. Please tell Ethan Caldwell I need to speak with him. The second. This concerns our child. The third was shorter. Please, just 5 minutes. Clara looked away, not because she was ashamed, but because seeing those words again reopened a door she had nailed shut for survival. Ethan clicked the last email. It was not dramatic. No threats. No demands. Just a young woman writing carefully, almost politely, explaining that she had tried other ways, that she knew his world did not make room for people like her, that she was not asking for a check, only for a conversation before the baby arrived. At the bottom, there was a scanned photograph from a small clinic. Ethan stared at the grainy image. It was nothing more than shadow and shaped to anyone else. To him, it became the first picture of a son he had never known he had. His throat moved. No sound came. Clara rose slowly. I waited outside your office for 4 hours that day, she said. It was raining. Your security team offered me a cab voucher if I promised not to come back. Ethan shut his eyes once. The rain from a memory returned. Newport. A red ribbon around her wrist. Her laughing when the lights went out. The morning after, Vanessa telling him a guest from the restaurant had called twice and that she had handled it. Handled it. Such a clean word for something that had broken 3 lives into separate rooms. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and stiffened. Mr. Caldwell, Vanessa is on board. She came as a guest of the Stanton Group. Ethan opened his eyes. The old Ethan would have calculated optics first. Who was watching? What could leak? How to contain the story before the market opened? But the boy beside Clara rubbed his eye with the back of one hand, tired and trusting, and every calculation sounded suddenly small. Bring her here, Ethan said. Clara's head lifted. No, Ethan turned to her. She did not step back. Noah does not need to sit in a room while adults defend what they did to him. Her voice was gentle, but it carried the weight of a door closing. Ethan looked at Noah, then back at Clara. For the first time that night, he accepted that leadership did not mean choosing the loudest action. Sometimes it meant not making a child carry the cost of adult pride. You are right, he said. 2 words. Plain. Unpolished. They startled Daniel more than any command. Ethan removed his blazer and draped it over the back of a chair, as if the celebration outside no longer belonged to him. Take Noah to the quiet cabin near the stern. Get him water. Something warm to eat. No cameras. No guests. No questions. Clara held Ethan's gaze. I go with him. Of course, Ethan said. No argument. No ownership in his tone. Clara took Noah's hand. At the door, Noah looked back. Are you coming too? Ethan did not answer quickly. He looked at the boy, at the small crest on his chest, at the life waiting behind a question too innocent to know how much it asked. Yes, he said softly. But first I have to stop being the kind of man people could hide you from. Vanessa Reed arrived at the forward lounge with a champagne smile still arranged on her face. She wore silver satin, pearl earrings, and the practiced calm of a woman who had spent years standing close to powerful men without ever being mistaken for powerless. Ethan, she said lightly, as if walking into a difficult room was simply another part of the evening's entertainment. Daniel said there was an urgent issue. I hope this is not about that unfortunate scene on deck. Ethan stood beside the walnut table, sleeves buttoned, watch still on his wrist, the medical envelope lying open in front of him. He did not offer her a drink. He did not ask her to sit. That was when Vanessa's smile changed by half an inch. It was not a scene, Ethan said. It was my son. The word son moved through the room like a glass bell struck once. Vanessa looked at Daniel, then back at Ethan. You should be careful with language like that. Anyone can make a claim in public, especially someone hired to serve at a high-profile event. Ethan's eyes stayed on her face. You remember Clara Whitmore? Vanessa gave a small, elegant sigh, the kind people used when they wanted cruelty to sound like exhaustion. Vaguely, there were many people over the years who tried to reach you for personal reasons. My job was to protect your time. By deleting emails, by filtering distractions, by labeling a pregnant woman as a publicity risk. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Only for a second. Ethan, you were closing the Meridian deal. Your father had just died. The board was unstable. You were not in a position to be manipulated by someone who had spent one weekend near you and suddenly discovered a future. Daniel looked down. The laptop screen cast a pale glow across his hands. Ethan heard every word, but his mind was elsewhere, walking backward through 5 years of polished rooms and private flights, through birthdays he had not attended because no one had told him that there was a candle burning with his name beside it. You made that decision for me, he said. Vanessa softened her voice. I made many decisions for you. That is why you trusted me. No, Ethan said. I trusted you to protect the company, not to decide which people were human enough to reach me. Vanessa's eyes flicked toward the deck, where shadows of guests moved behind the glass. Think carefully. If this becomes public, the acquisition suffers. The Stanton Group will hesitate. Reporters will turn it into a scandal. A waitress, a secret child, a yacht party. You know exactly how it will look. Ethan looked at the champagne flute he had left on the bar. The bubbles were almost gone. 15 minutes earlier, he had held it like a crown. Now it looked like a small, expensive mistake. I know how it will look, he said. For once, I care more about what it is. Vanessa stared at him, and for the first time, confidence left her face. Daniel's phone buzzed again, but he did not check it. No one moved until Ethan spoke. You will leave this yacht at the next docking point. Tomorrow morning, my legal team will review every decision you made while representing me. Daniel will preserve the records. Nothing disappears. Vanessa's lips parted. You are going to damage everything you built over a woman who waited 5 years to corner you. Ethan stepped closer, not threatening, not loud, simply finished pretending that power required volume. She waited because people like us made waiting the only door available to her. The sentence settled. Vanessa had no answer that did not reveal more of herself. Outside the lounge, in the quiet cabin near the stern, Clara sat with Noah on a cream-colored bench while a steward placed a bowl of tomato soup and a grilled cheese sandwich on the small table. Noah's eyes brightened at the food, but he looked toward the door before eating. Is he still mad? He asked. Clara brushed his hair back with her fingers. He is learning. Noah considered that with the seriousness of a child who believed adults could change if someone explained the rules clearly enough. Will he know about my heart? Clara's hand paused, then continued gently. Yes. Will he help? Clara looked through the small window at the black water sliding past the yacht. For 5 years, she had built answers out of work shifts, overdue bills, clinic forms, and bedtime stories that avoided the word father. She had learned not to expect rescue. She had learned that dignity sometimes meant carrying pain without letting it shape your voice. But tonight, something had shifted. Not healed, not forgiven. Shifted. The door opened quietly. Ethan stood there without his blazer, without the champagne, without the crowd behind him. In his hand was a glass of water for Noah. Such a small thing. Almost nothing. But Clara noticed that he had brought it himself. Noah looked up. Ethan crossed the room slowly, then lowered himself to one knee so his eyes were level with the boys. I spoke to the person who kept your mother from reaching me, he said. That should never have happened. Noah accepted the water with both hands. Are you my dad? The room became very still. Clara did not rescue Ethan from the question. Ethan looked at her once, then back at Noah. I believe I am, he said carefully. But I am not going to ask you to believe anything just because I say it. We will do this properly. With doctors? With your mother? With time? Noah nodded, satisfied by the honesty more than the answer. Ethan removed the Swiss watch from his wrist. He did not give it to Noah. Not yet. He placed it on the table between them, where the second hand moved with patient, quiet clicks. This watch has counted a lot of things that did not matter, he said. I would like it to start counting the time I show up. Clara looked at the watch, then at the man kneeling beside her son. Her face stayed calm, but her eyes softened in a way Ethan knew he had not earned. Not fully. Not tonight. And maybe that was the first honest thing between them. Outside, the yacht continued across the Hudson, carrying music, whispers, and a celebration that no longer knew what it was celebrating. Inside the small cabin, a child lifted a spoonful of soup. A waitress with a wine-red ribbon sat straighter than any guest on deck, and a millionaire finally began to understand that the most important inheritance he had ever received was not a company, but a chance to become worthy of a small boy's trust. The watch stayed on the cabin table while Noah ate, its quiet ticking filling the spaces between words that no one knew how to arrange yet. Ethan sat across from him, not at the head of anything, not behind a desk, not protected by assistants or glass walls. Just a man on a cream-colored bench, watching a boy dip grilled cheese into tomato soup with the careful focus of someone who had been taught not to waste food. Clara noticed that. Ethan noticed that Clara noticed. For years, he had measured responsibility in numbers large enough to impress rooms full of strangers. Revenue, properties, jobs created, markets entered. But Noah wiped a drop of soup from the table with his napkin before Clara could ask, and Ethan felt a quiet shame settle behind his ribs. A child did not become careful like that by accident. Do you like boats? Ethan asked, because the question was simple and he needed something simple. Noah looked up. I like them if they do not make mommy work too late. Clara lowered her eyes to hide the small ache that crossed her face. Ethan heard it anyway. That is fair, he said. This one is too big. Noah studied him. You own it. Ethan nodded. The company does. Do you live on it? No, then why is it so big? Clara almost smiled. Ethan did. Not much, but enough to change his face. That is a very good question. Noah accepted that and returned to his soup. The honesty in the child's world was clean. Things were useful or they were not. People came back or they did not. A yacht was too big if no one lived on it. A father was only a father if he showed up after being told the truth. A soft knock came at the door. Daniel stepped in with his phone pressed against his palm. Mr. Caldwell, the Stanton Group, is requesting a statement before we dock. Several guests are asking whether the announcement is still happening. There are also concerns about photographs from the deck. Ethan looked at Clara. She had gone still at the word photographs. Not for herself. For Noah. The instinct was immediate, protective, and sharp enough to make the room feel smaller. Ethan stood. No photographs of Noah. No names. No medical details. Anyone who violates that will answer to me personally and legally. Daniel nodded. Understood. And cancel the acquisition announcement. Daniel blinked. Tonight. Tonight. The board will want an explanation. Ethan looked at the watch on the table, then at the boy eating soup in a borrowed cabin while strangers upstairs whispered over champagne. Tell them I finally found something more important than timing. Daniel's expression softened, just for a second. Yes, sir. When the door closed, Clara looked at Ethan with a new kind of caution. You do not have to turn this into a performance. I am not. You are used to stages. The words were not cruel. That made them harder to avoid. Ethan sat again, slower this time. You are right. Clara held his gaze, waiting. Ethan had heard people accuse him before. Competitors, journalists, former partners with polished resentment. But Clara did not accuse. She observed. It left him nowhere to hide. I was going to make a speech tonight about expanding into coastal properties, he said. I had 3 paragraphs about legacy. Clara's eyes flicked to Noah, then back to him. Legacy is not a paragraph. No, Ethan said quietly. It is not. Noah pushed his empty bowl forward. Mommy says legacy is what people remember when you are not in the room. Ethan looked at Clara. She gave the smallest shrug, as if embarrassed that a bedtime explanation had reached a millionaire's yacht. I may have said something like that. Noah nodded seriously. She also says manners show up when nobody important is watching. This time Ethan lowered his head. Not laughing. Not smiling. Receiving it. Your mother is wise. I know, Noah said, as if this had never been in question. Clara touched the wine-red ribbon at the back of her hair, tightening it though it did not need tightening. Ethan remembered the way guests had looked through her, the way he had looked through her, the careless sentence about balance, spoken by a man who had never wondered how many storms she had crossed without a deck beneath her feet. "Clara," he said. She did not answer, but her eyes stayed on him. "What I said to you outside was beneath what you deserved." "Yes," she said. No softness, no anger, just truth. Ethan nodded. "I am sorry." Noah looked between them, absorbing the shape of apology. Clara's face did not change immediately. Forgiveness did not arrive like a curtain rising. It moved, if it moved at all, like dawn behind heavy clouds. "Thank you," she said. "But an apology is not a bridge. It is a first plank." Ethan let that settle. On deck, another wave of laughter rose and faded, thinner than before. He reached for the watch, closed his fingers around it, then placed it back down without wearing it. "Then I will start with planks," he said. Noah leaned forward. "Can bridges be built on boats?" Clara finally smiled, tired and small and real. Ethan looked at his son, then at the dark river beyond the window. "Maybe not on boats," he said, "but maybe they can begin there." The yacht began its slow turn toward the marina just after 10 o'clock, easing through the dark water with the city lights trembling on every small wave. Upstairs, the party had lost its shape. People still held glasses. People still smiled when they remembered someone might be looking. But the center of the night had moved away from the champagne tower and into a quiet cabin near the stern, where a boy had finished his soup and a millionaire had stopped pretending the world could be managed from a distance. Daniel returned once more, this time without entering fully. "We dock in about 12 minutes, he said. "Security has cleared the south ramp. Your car is ready. Miss Whitmore's belongings have been brought from the staff area." Clara stood at once. "I can take Noah home myself." Ethan turned toward her. "I know you can." The answer stopped her because it did not argue. He did not say she was tired. He did not say he had resources. He did not say what men with money often said when they mistook help for control. He only looked at her and added, "I am asking how I can make tonight easier without taking anything from you." Clara's fingers rested on the back of Noah's chair. For a moment, the room held its breath again, but softer this time. Not the public silence from the deck. A private silence. The kind where trust considered whether it was safe to take one small step. "We need to go to the clinic in Queens tomorrow morning," she said. 9 o'clock. Ethan nodded. "I will be there. Not with photographers. No photographers. Not with lawyers speaking over doctors. No lawyers in the room unless you ask for one. And not with anyone calling my son a situation." Ethan looked down, ashamed before he could defend himself. "No one will." Noah slid from the bench and picked up the watch from the table with both hands. It looked too large against his small fingers. He carried it to Ethan. "You forgot this." Ethan did not take it immediately. "I did." Noah held it higher. "Mommy says important things should not be left behind." Clara closed her eyes briefly, as if the child had accidentally opened every locked drawer in her heart. Ethan accepted the watch, but instead of putting it on, he slipped it into his pocket. "Your mother is right again." Noah smiled a little, proud of both of them. They walked out together. Not like a family. Not yet. More like three people learning the same narrow hallway from different histories. As they passed the main deck, conversations thinned. Guests looked over shoulders. A few tried to hide their phones. Ethan stopped near the champagne tower, where a server was clearing untouched glasses. Clara felt him pause and braced herself for another speech. But Ethan did not go to the microphone. He turned to Daniel. "Send the statement now." Daniel read from his phone. "Due to a private family matter, tonight's business announcement has been postponed. Caldwell Maritime Holdings asks for respect and privacy for all individuals involved, especially the minor child. No further comment will be made this evening." Ethan looked at Clara. "Is that acceptable?" The question was simple. The fact that he asked it in front of his own staff was not. Clara nodded once. "Yes." They continued toward the ramp. The night air grew colder near the marina, carrying the smell of salt, fuel, and rain waiting somewhere beyond the skyline. Noah held Clara's hand with one hand and touched the Caldwell crest at his neck with the other. At the bottom of the ramp, 2 black cars waited. Ethan stopped several feet away from them, leaving Clara the space to choose. "I can have a driver take you home," he said. "Or Daniel can call a cab. Or I can walk you to whatever you plan to take." Clara looked past him to the marina gate. We came by the catering van. Ethan nodded again. No judgment. No surprise. Then I will walk you to the van. They crossed the lot under yellow lights. The wheels of Clara's service cart clicked over the pavement. Noah yawned, leaning against her side. Ethan wanted to pick him up, to carry him, to make some grand gesture that would look like love from a distance. He did not. He had learned enough in one night to know that fatherhood could not begin by reaching before being invited. At the catering van, Clara opened the side door and helped Noah inside. A blanket lay folded on the seat, along with a backpack covered in faded dinosaur patches. Ethan stared at the backpack longer than he should have. It was such an ordinary thing. That was what undid him. Not the medical envelope. Not the emails. The backpack. The small proof of mornings he had missed, lunches packed, jackets forgotten, stickers chosen, a whole life built without him because no one had handed him the door. Noah buckled himself in. "See you tomorrow?" he asked. Ethan bent slightly, careful to remain outside the van. "Yes, tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Noah studied him, then nodded as if granting a temporary contract. "Do not be late." Clara looked at Ethan then, and for the first time, there was the faintest trace of warmth beneath the caution. Ethan placed one hand over his heart, not theatrically, but solemnly. "I will not be late." Clara closed the van door gently. Before she walked around to the driver's side, Ethan spoke her name. She turned. The wine-red ribbon lifted in the wind. "Thank you for coming back," he said. Clara held his gaze across 5 years, across every unanswered letter, across a deck full of people who had finally gone quiet. "I did not come back for you," she said. "I came back for him." Ethan nodded. The words hurt. They were also fair. Clara got into the van, started the engine, and pulled away from the marina without looking back. Ethan stood beneath the yellow light until the taillights disappeared into the city. Only then did he take the watch from his pocket and listen to it ticking in his palm, measuring the last few seconds of the man he had been before a child told him not to be late. By 8:43 the next morning, Clara was already sitting in the clinic waiting room in Queens with Noah, beside her, and a paper cup of coffee cooling untouched between both hands. The room was small and bright, with alphabet posters on the wall, plastic chairs along the window, and a television mounted in the corner playing the weather with the sound turned low. Outside, traffic moved along the avenue in short, impatient bursts. Buses sighed at the curb. Delivery trucks double-parked. New York had returned to its usual rhythm, as if the river, the yacht, and the silence on deck had belonged to another lifetime. Noah swung his sneakers above the floor and traced circles on his knee with one finger. He had slept less than 6 hours, but insisted on wearing his blue button-down shirt because, as he told Clara, important doctor days needed collars. Clara had smiled when he said it. Then she had gone into the bathroom and held the sink until her breathing steadied. At 8:57, the clinic door opened. Ethan Caldwell stepped inside alone. No assistant. No security team. No camera-ready suit. He wore dark slacks, a pale blue shirt, and the same white ivory blazer from the night before folded carefully over one arm. His Swiss watch was not on his wrist. Clara noticed before she meant to. Noah noticed too. "You are early," Noah said. Ethan looked at the clock above the reception desk. 3 minutes. Noah considered that. "That counts." Ethan nodded with the seriousness the verdict deserved. "I hoped it would." Clara stood slowly. She had prepared herself for a version of Ethan who would arrive with solutions too large for the room. A private specialist flown in. A legal team waiting in the hallway. A check placed on the counter like an apology that did not know how to speak. Instead, he walked to the reception desk and gave his name quietly. The nurse handed him a clipboard. "Family medical history," she said. Ethan took it, then looked back at Clara. "May I sit near you while I fill this out?" The question made the nurse glance up. It made Clara's fingers tighten around her coffee cup. "Yes," she said after a moment. "Near is fine." He sat one chair away, not beside her, not across like a negotiation. One chair away, leaving space for the past to breathe. The clipboard rested on his knee. He began writing. Father, hypertension. Grandfather, heart valve surgery at 62. Paternal aunt, rhythm irregularities treated with medication. No known sudden cardiac events. The words were clinical, but his hand slowed as he wrote them, because each line was something Noah had been denied. Information. Context. A map of risks and protections. Clara watched the pen move. Her anger did not vanish. Anger like hers did not vanish because a man arrived on time with a pen. But something inside it changed shape. It became less lonely. A door opened, and Dr. Elaine Porter called Noah's name. She was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair, kind eyes, and the calm voice of someone who knew children listened to tone before words. In the exam room, she reviewed the forms, asked questions, and explained that Noah's condition looked manageable with monitoring, routine checkups, and the right medication if needed. Nothing about her voice was dramatic. That was what made Clara's eyes sting. For 2 months, uncertainty had made every heartbeat sound like a warning. Now a doctor was saying manageable, and this time there was a family history on the page. Noah sat on the exam table while the doctor listened to his chest. Ethan stood near the wall, hands folded in front of him, silent enough to be respectful. When Dr. Porter asked Clara a question, he did not answer for her. When she asked him about his family, he answered plainly. When Noah looked nervous, Ethan did not rush forward. He waited until the boy looked at him first. "Does it hurt?" Noah asked. "The checkup?" Ethan said. Noah shook his head and touched his chest. Ethan crossed the small room only after Clara gave the slightest nod. He knelt beside the exam table. "I do not know exactly how it feels," he said. "But I know this. You are not doing it by yourself anymore." Noah looked at Clara. "Mommy too. Especially your mother," Ethan said. "She has been doing the work since before I knew where to stand." Clara looked away. The words from the deck returned, changed by his own mouth into something like accountability. After the appointment, they stepped back into the waiting room with a printed plan, a follow-up date, and the first fragile outline of a future. Ethan held the door for them, then stopped outside on the sidewalk. He did not offer a house. He did not offer a car. He did not offer to rewrite their lives by noon. He only said, "I would like to help with the medical bills, and I would like to be present. But Clara, you decide the pace." She studied him beneath the gray morning light. Cars passed. A siren wailed far away, softened by distance. Noah leaned against her coat, tired but calm. "The pace starts with one appointment," Clara said. Ethan nodded. "Then one appointment." Noah reached into his backpack and pulled out a small dinosaur sticker, green and slightly bent at one corner. He held it out to Ethan. "This is so you remember." Ethan accepted it like it weighed more than gold. "Where should I put it?" Noah pointed to the empty place on Ethan's wrist. "Where the watch was." Clara almost laughed, but it came out closer to a breath. Ethan pressed the sticker gently against the inside of his wrist, where the Swiss watch had once told him the time. Noah smiled. For the first time, Ethan understood that some things were not childish because they were small. Some things were sacred because they were given without fear. One appointment became 2, then 3. Not quickly, not neatly. Nothing about trust moved in a straight line. Some mornings, Clara still woke before sunrise with her hand on the folder of medical papers, checking that every form was there, every number copied twice, every emergency contact updated. Some evenings, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse above Manhattan, looking at the green dinosaur sticker inside his wrist long after it had begun to curl at the edges. He had board meetings to attend, calls to return, and newspapers trying to guess why Caldwell Maritime Holdings had delayed the resort acquisition. But the old urgency no longer ruled him. The yacht had taught him something no business school had ever dared to say. A man could own the view and still miss what was standing right in front of him. 2 weeks after the clinic visit, Ethan arrived at a public playground in Queens at 4 o'clock exactly. He wore jeans, a navy jacket, and no watch. Clara sat on a bench near the swings, her wine-red ribbon tied around her hair, a paper cup of coffee beside her, her posture straight in the cold afternoon air. Noah spotted Ethan first and ran halfway across the rubber pavement before stopping, suddenly unsure of how excited he was allowed to be. Ethan stopped too. He did not open his arms as if the ending had already been written. He simply crouched down. "Hi, Noah." Noah looked back at Clara. She nodded once. Then he ran the rest of the way. Ethan caught him gently, awkwardly, like a man receiving something breakable and holy. Clara watched from the bench, her face calm, though her fingers tightened around the coffee cup until the cardboard bent. The hug lasted 3 seconds, maybe 4. Long enough to change Ethan, not long enough to erase anything. Afterward, Noah showed him the slide, the climbing ropes, the exact place where one pigeon stole a cracker last summer. Ethan listened to every detail as if it were a shareholder report from the most important company on earth. When Noah ran toward the swings, Ethan walked back to Clara, keeping a respectful distance from the bench. The final medical review came in, he said. Dr. Porter said the outlook is good. Clara nodded. Yes, he will need checkups, but he is going to be okay. The words should have been simple. They were not. They carried every sleepless night that had come before them. Ethan looked toward Noah, who was laughing because the swing had gone 6 inches higher than before. I started a patient support fund at the clinic, he said. Clara turned sharply. He held up one hand, not to stop her, but to slow himself. Not in Noah's name. Not in yours. No cameras. No announcement. Dr. Porter will decide how it is used for families who need testing and follow-up care. I did it because I should have understood sooner how many people are left waiting for doors to open. Clara studied him. That sounds like a plank. Ethan gave a small smile. I hoped it might. The wind moved through the bare branches above them. For a while, neither of them spoke. They watched Noah drag his shoes through the mulch beneath the swing, pretending to brake like a train. Then Clara said, he asked last night if you would come to his school art show next month. Ethan looked at her, and the careful millionaire vanished for half a second, replaced by a man surprised by grace. May I? You may come, Clara said. You may not bring a photographer. You may not buy the school a new auditorium before dessert. And you may not turn a kindergarten art show into a Caldwell event. Ethan nodded solemnly. No photographers. No auditorium. No event. And if he draws 3 sons and a purple dog, you say it is beautiful. What if it is beautiful? Clara almost smiled. Then you will finally be right about something. Ethan laughed softly, and this time the sound did not disturb the air between them. It warmed it. Noah ran back with flushed cheeks and a leaf in his hand, shaped almost like a heart. Look, he said, offering it to Ethan first, then quickly to Clara, as if fairness mattered deeply. It is for both of you. Clara and Ethan each held one side of the fragile leaf. None of them spoke. The afternoon light slipped lower between the apartment buildings. Cars passed beyond the fence. Somewhere, a dog barked. The world continued, ordinary and imperfect, asking nothing of them except presence. Ethan looked at Clara, then at Noah, and understood at last that family was not a prize handed to the man who arrived with the most money. It was a place built slowly, with kept promises, quiet apologies, and small hands reaching back when they were ready. Clara had not returned to his life carrying revenge. She had returned carrying the truth. And the truth, once held with humility, had become the first bridge home.